Hello, everybody. This is the Earful Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G, and I want to talk to you about the bouquinistes, the booksellers along the Seine River. Before anything, you have probably seen these booksellers in the iconic green kiosks that line the Seine River. They've been in the news an awful lot lately, and I want to recap that, which is why I'm putting this episode out today. But also, I want to go back and share my chat with Sydney, one of the bouquinistes from along the Seine River. But first, why is it in the news? Okay, so the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, the plan is the athletes are going to come down on boats along the Seine River. The town hall said, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to sell tickets to it. We're going to have a lot of people down by the Seine looking at the water. These green boxes, these kiosks full with secondhand books should not be there. We need to remove them. So this was news that really, really upset people. The plan was for a temporary removal of the boxes, but not just the bouquinistes themselves, the booksellers, but a lot of people got really upset about it. So much so that they had petitions to change the idea. A lot of the booksellers themselves had little QR codes up so you could scan it and sign your name, say that you didn't want it to happen. And just this week, the President, Emmanuel Macron, has said, you know what, keep them there. We're going to keep the booksellers on the riverside. So people have been talking about it a lot. Now you know if you didn't. And I thought it was a good chance to share the time that I talked to Sydney, an American bouquinist, probably the only American bouquinist who I met back in 2019 and shared her story. So I called her last night and we had a long chat about the whole thing. She said when she heard the news that they'd planned to take them down, she was devastated. She said she was in tears. She couldn't believe it. She was down taking pictures of them practicing the removal, like the town hall was experimenting with it. She said some of these boxes are so old that removing them essentially could crumble them. I remember this is something that's been around for hundreds, like 450 years. So real sore point. And then she was thrilled to hear that they'd keep them open. Now, Sydney and her bookstall, if you're going to go looking for her, it was a victim of COVID. So she's not down there anymore, but she's keeping a close eye on everything that's happening. And she's a real character. So I thought it could be a fun chance to listen to this episode that a lot of you newer listeners haven't heard. And I think it's also worth sharing because this is one of the episodes that the New York Times singled out as worth listening to on this podcast. Sydney and I had a good laugh about this. They said at the end, so they did this, the New York Times did this story about, travel podcasts to listen to. And at the end of the bit they wrote about the Earful Tower, they said, expect tours of the artistic and culinary pleasures of the city and interviews with its inhabitants, the French model Caroline de Maigret, the chef David Leibowitz, cafe owners, and even a bouquiniste selling books beside the Seine. So let's go back and listen to my chat with Sydney and get a better understanding of exactly what a bouquiniste is and what they do. This show is brought to you by the patrons of the Earful Tower, patreon.com/the Earful Tower. Sign up and get all kinds of benefits. This month, I'm doing a foodie February thing. So there's lots of extra things, including bonus podcast episodes, collections of restaurants that I've been to, tips, tricks, pictures, everything to do with food. And check it out. Thanks to the current patrons and enjoy this episode. You're an American bouquinist.
I am. Los Angeles.
Okay.
I mean, I'd rather claim that I'm Angelino than I'm an American.
So you're an Angelino
Oui.
among a sea of French bouquinistes.
Yes. No, désolé.
How people just ask you for a cigarette mid-interview.
Right, yeah.
But tell me, how you said it's an interesting story of how you became a bouquinist in this city, and I said, don't you tell me until I press record. So maybe you can enlighten us all.
Well, let's see if I can give you the Cliff Notes. I don't know if you know what Cliff Notes are.
Absolutely, the short version.
Great.
Love the short
So here we go. I came here a little over 2.5 years ago, and it was partially a midlife crisis vacation, but I also came here to help save James Baldwin's house in the south of France.
Okay.
James Baldwin is my hero.
Okay.
I've read everything about him. I think he's probably one of the most important people of the 20th, 21st century. So I came here to do that. In being in Paris, there was an exhibition of rare books in my neighborhood. I walked in, I asked the gallerist, whose books are these? She introduced me to this man called Philo. We talked a minute. I didn't really even realize that he was a Hell's Angel.
Okay.
I didn't see the patch on his back.
Right.
We talked for a minute. He said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a book curator. Let's get coffee." This turned into me working with him and having the stalls. He said, "I'm opening these book stalls."
A Hell's Angel.
Yes.
This is Hunter S. Thompson territory.
It is. Well, he has his own publishing company called Sirius Publishing.
Okay.
So he publishes his own books. We have been working together for over a year. It's really the best business relationship ever because my books complement his books. He came here as a child with his father and had this dream to have bookstalls literally on the quay here. It wasn't anywhere else. And he spent years trying to get these boxes. And I'm just this lucky woman who gets to stand here every day and sell books.
Wow.
And I sell very specific books.
So talk us through the books that you've got here.
Well, in my stall specifically, of course, I have James Baldwin, which is an obvious go-to. But I collect certain publishers, the Grove Press, which started as the Olympia Press here in Paris. I have Auster, who spent time here. I have some French authors that are now translated in English. I've got an original story about Charlie Manson. This particular copy, The Family, there's only 800 of this one out there because they got sued. I've got Henry Miller, Capote, Isherwood, and I've got great paperbacks, just things you can pick up. And then I make bookmarks and journals.
So you've got who's the original hipster up there?
Well, this is actually a photo, it's like from 1895 in New York, but he is look at it, I mean, that picture, it's the beard and the suit.
Right.
You know, everyone's trying to bite that rhyme.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool, okay.
Yeah.
And so just to paint a picture for the people at home, almost all of your books are in plastic covers.
Well, they all have to be covered.
Why is that?
Because, well, we're outdoors, right? You have sun, wind, rain, everything. So to protect them, this plastic cover protects from sun damage, the wind, dust, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
so
that what does everybody do that? Or is it just...
Well, yeah, almost everyone. I mean, there's some books you'll see that aren't covered, and that's just so people can look at them. But then they get damaged. As you'll see, they get damaged, and then I have to take them home, and I'm a book restorer, so then I go home and I restore them.
So let's talk about the typical... First, let's talk about what it's like to be an American... let's talk about what it's like to be an Angelino woman among a bunch of what appears to me to be mostly French older gentlemen.
Yes.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Do you talk to them a lot? Are they...
Oh, this is my family.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is my family. These guys scooped me up. Part of it's because of my personality. When I arrived here, I came and I painted the boxes and I was here and introduced myself, and I'm very charismatic. I think maybe you noticed that.
Absolutely, I was drawn in like a
right. I'm like a moth to a flame.
Yeah, well, that works better.
Yeah, we'll mince words later. But over this time, they become my family. And it was my birthday a couple weeks ago, and we had a little birthday party here, and all the guys that you see behind you, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, they're just like big brothers or uncles.
Right.
Or
So there's not so much competition between you guys?
No, we work together.
Right.
Oh no, there's no competition at all.
I guess you're selling different kinds of books as well, just by the looks of
even
it
when
from
we
here.
have the same books, it's like the gentleman there sitting, he has quite a few of the same books that I have in this booth, but there's no competition.
Right.
We're all here to make some sort of living.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that as well. A lot of, like, for people who've never sort of been to Paris or don't even know what we're talking about, the book stores are quite small. I mean, how many books have you got in your collection here? Compared to a bookshop small, I mean.
Oh, well, I mean, we're independent. We're an independent bookstore, right? So this is something, the bouquinistes have been here for over 100 years, right? We sell books because we love books. We're in the business of putting the right book with the right person. We're not here to necessarily turn a profit, sell the newest thing. It's about having a book lover approach the stall and ask, well, what should I read?
Right.
And sometimes it's a motorcycle magazine or an art book or a novel.
Right.
Where you go into a bookstore and you're overwhelmed. I mean, I love bookstores, don't get me wrong. Okay, I love bookstores. I could spend all day in a bookstore. But this is more personal because every book in here I've chosen, I've curated it. I know who it should go to. And then sometimes I'm surprised by who it does go to.
So do you think people should come in and say, hey, Sydney, well, they wouldn't know your name yet, but let's say,
Well,
hey,
now
Sydney,
they may.
Hey, Sydney, I'll have a book, please. And then you'll...
Sure. Well, people ask me all the time, like, you know, I'm traveling, I gotta sit on the train for 10 hours, what should I read?
What would you pick for me?
Well, my first question would be, and we'll go back to the English section.
Oh, I'm walking backwards here, okay.
My first question would be, well, what do you like to read? Like, what's your go-to reading?
At the moment, I'm into books about France and Paris, but that's largely because I have a podcast about France and Paris. I like a good...
So I have a great book for you.
Okay.
I have a great book for you. Very famous French writer. It's translated into English, and it's about Pigalle.
Okay.
And it's from the 50s.
And it's called Boulevard by Robert Sabatier.
Oui. And it's great. It's all the things that you think about of Pigalle, but in a different era.
I'll read the back so people at home know what we're talking about. Robert Sabatier, or Robert Sabatier, was born in...
Oh my god, I love that you did like an American accent.
I did an Angelino accent.
No, is that it? I don't know what Angelinos sound like.
Well,
like me.
I assume so.
A woman with a cold.
Was born in Paris in 1923 in a house once inhabited by the well-known poets Verlaine and Rimbaud, and spent his childhood wandering the streets dear to Utrecht and Lautrec. So we're talking Montmartre here.
Oui.
Maurice Utrecht and Toulouse-Lautrec. This is my neighborhood. I live up there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, okay.
Good
I think I'm
for
going to have
you.
to buy this book.
Yeah.
And it's a first edition. And how much is that?
Well, it's €35.
Okay.
But, you know, I might do a little deal for you.
Well,
we'll
that
see.
sounds like it. So, okay, that's a great... I'm going to get the book, depending, deal permitting. But I want to know, like, when a typical tourist comes, and
Sure.
maybe you can speak on behalf of all the bouquinistes here.
Well, I can't speak on behalf of
But
any
maybe
other
you could
bouquinistes.
try.
No, I really can't.
Okay, well, we'll speak on
because-
behalf of yourself then.
Because, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own business. So what's the question?
Right. So,
before
well, I was going to
speak?
say, like, what would be your advice to tourists who don't maybe speak any French, who want to buy a book
Well,
or a magazine?
to anyone who's visiting France or Paris, please attempt a little bit of French.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm here 2.5 years and I'm still learning French. But I never approach anybody without the minimum. Bonjour, comment allez-vous? It's just basic. This is for me, my experience has been, this is a country of gesture and a lot of humility in how you are when you walk into a place. The greatest thing to do is just say hello, goodbye, thank you. And Americans in particular don't do this.
I've talked about this on the show before, and there's this idea, because I've had a few guests who've had similar sort of sentiments there, and the idea that some have said is that in America it's quite acceptable to walk up and smile to someone as a form of a hello.
That's bullshit.
Oh yeah?
Sorry.
That's
okay. No, but that's bullshit. I mean, look, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I'm 47 years old. Both my parents were born and raised in Los Angeles. I was taught that if you go anywhere, you acknowledge and greet the person who's in the store, serving you, whatever. This laziness of, chagrin is a greeting, that's not right. We as globally are losing the idea of being humanist. You see a person, hello, how are you, goodbye, thank you. And I think the French, in particularly, still have maintained that little bit of humanist behavior. Whether it's genuine or not, it's just a simple thing. I don't walk into anywhere and not acknowledge whoever's in front of me. And I didn't do that in LA either. In LA, I did the same thing.
So that's, well, in a way, you did speak on behalf of all the bouquinistes there. So it worked in the end. But what about, is there a general rule for haggling over price?
I don't think there's a general rule.
But it's not discouraged, or, I mean...
No, I mean, it's, we're here trying to make a living, the price is the price. I am a really good bookseller, but then I also want people to have books. So I will always offer something. Again, I can't speak for other bouquinistes.
And that's something I might have to go on and uncover for myself. But I also have a few more questions I want to ask you. Specifically, there's some things that I've heard about bouquinistes that I'm not sure are true. Someone told me, like I heard it once, that the rent on these things is like €1 a month. It's like a token rent or something. Is there any truth in that?
As far as what I know is there's not really a rent per se. What I understand is you buy them, you own them, and then that's it.
Right. And what about the books? And these are just sort of my quick fire questions here.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you keep the books in overnight?
Can you imagine me picking up? There's 100 books here. Can you imagine me taking them home? No, everything.
I told you I'd ask silly questions.
No, I know, and I love it. I love a silly question. No, everything gets locked up. It's totally secure. For the most part, it's waterproof. Right. But everything gets left here.
Plus, you have expensive books here as well, so you wouldn't want to risk.
I just leave them here.
You don't. It doesn't bother you that someone could bust them open? Does that happen?
Just faith. Oh, it does, but I have to have blind faith.
Right.
I don't even know what that means, but...
Nobody does, Sydney.
Well, I mean, it's really well lit. There's cameras. For the most part, I don't know. I guess I throw caution to the wind.
Right. What about, so you've got a lot of English books. And if you need to speak to that customer, you can just... you've got a lot of English...
That's a looky-loo. I can tell.
How can you... Okay, that's a great question. How do you know when someone's a looky-loo and when they're the real McCoy?
Well, some of it is...
Blind faith?
No, some of it's just... I can tell by how they look. Part of it's that. And then how they browse through. Like, people either stop and show some interest, right? Like, they'll actually... be intrigued, or they'll just keep going. And certain tourists aren't looking for English books. They're looking for very specific Parisian, French souvenirs.
Even if they can't read them, maybe?
No, of course not. Like, that gentleman definitely just wants to take something home that says he was in Paris.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, it's great. It's just not my thing.
Well, you do have some things, like, you have some, I'm looking at Playboy magazines.
Yeah,
right,
but those are English.
From the 70s.
So, yeah, 70s.
80s.
And then I only have one left from the 80s, but 76, the year I was born.
72 there?
72, yeah, go ahead.
Why do you have Playboys?
Why not? They're amazing. But this was when Playboy still had great writers. Right? So this is why that whole saying is Playboy's not just about the naked pictures, because if you open them, the content is primarily articles. There's
right, people say they read them for the articles.
But there's 3 naked pictures, right? So they're amazing. And why wouldn't I have them?
No, good point.
I mean, this is when women still look like women.
What do they look like now?
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah. All right. The last question I want to run by you is, what do you see as the future for the bouquinistes in Paris? Do you think it's going to continue as people turn more towards the internet? Do you think it's going to...
But that's already happened. I mean, they're not going to turn more. They can't. It's already there. The bouquinistes have been affected tremendously. That's why when you go closer to Saint-Michel and the Notre Dame, you'll see bouquinistes that have souvenirs. We're not going anywhere, right? If you love books and you want to sell books, you're going to stay here. I'm here in the snow. I'm here when it's 0 degrees. I'm here when it's 40 degrees. I sell books, period. That's what I do. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. The internet, you can't, I mean, sure, you can find things on the internet, but it's not the same thing as walking up and having me take off the plastic and you open the book. And I tell people when I'm showing them a book, just read the first page. If the first page grabs you, then you should have that book. Book selling is a relationship. It's something between 2 people. It's not the internet. You can't go on Amazon and speak to someone who knows the book. You can't touch it or smell it.
It's a tangible thing, isn't it?
Right. I mean, the name of my company is The Smell of Books.
The smell of books.
Right.
The smell of books or the smell o' books?
No, the smell of books.
Right.
It's
You got
here.
the F. Better Scrabble score like that, isn't it?
The
Throw
smell
F
of
in there.
books with the S-Z. Because
Books
my
with
last name is Zekley.
Sydney Zekley.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my final question.
Okay.
Sydney Zekley is, let's say somewhere out in the world there's someone listening to this episode, they're coming to Paris, they're thinking of popping in and saying hi to you. Is there anything they should know before they meet you?
Not at all.
So they walk up and say, hey Sydney, I heard you on the Earful Tower.
Sure.
Tell me what book to get.
Sure, just say hello. But at least, or bonjour.
Okay.
Start with bonjour, yeah.
There you go,
Yeah.
guys. Thank you very much, Sydney. I think
You're
it's time,
so welcome.
time for me to go and
Thank
buy a
you.
book, I think.
So there you go. As I said, Sydney is no longer a bookseller by the Seine, but the bookstores are still open. You can go and find them pretty much all on both sides of the river in central Paris, and you might be able to find yourself a really nice little memory to take home from your next trip to Paris. Yes, and before I forget, we're trying something new. We're putting some of our favorite old episodes of the Earful Tower podcast on YouTube, together with videos of what we're talking about. And one of the ones that we've done is this exact episode with a video walking along the river, showing the bouquinistes, but also, Notre Dame and the river. The idea being that the episode is the soundtrack to a walk through the city. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Earful Tower. Subscribe and enjoy just a little bit more Paris. That'll do for me. Thanks again to the patrons. My name's Oliver G. This is The Earful Tower, and have a great week.